Congress and the National Conference will be going alone in the upcoming Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections. Following a series of disagreements and very public spats, the two parties have announced a parting of ways. Interestingly, the split was an acrimonious one, as it is clear in the last few months. Just before the Assembly election season begins in October, the UP alliance is slowly falling apart. First, tensions with the NCP soured prospects for the Congress in Maharashtra, and now it's a breakup in Jammu and Kashmir. A 6-year-old alliance which stood the test of a militancy-torn state, failing at the altar of politics. And the end, itself acrimonious. First, a hurriedly called press conference by Congress.
पार्टी अपने बलबूते पर, अपने कार्यक्रमों के आधार पर, अपने सेक्युलर क्रेडेंशियल्स को और मजबूत करते हुए और पेश करते हुए हम ये आने वाला चुनाव जम्मू कश्मीर रियासत की विधानसभा के लिए लड़ने का फैसला किया.
Then moments later, a series of tweets by Umar Abdullah, taking credit for the split, saying it was him who met Sonia Gandhi 10 days ago to convey the parting of ways.
2 weeks ago, I had a lengthy discussion with the National Conference President, Dr. Abdullah, who in turn authorized me to go and meet Mrs. Gandhi and convey to her our gratitude for the support that we have received from her personally, from the Congress leadership, from Mr. Rahul Gandhi, but also convey to her that in light of our experience of the Parliament elections, it would be better that we fight these elections alone.
The two parties had contested the 2008 Assembly elections on their own strength before tying up for various local and even Rajya Sabha elections. But despite being in power, it's been a downhill run for Omar and company, with vote share plunging from the highest in 2008 to the lowest in May elections. Neither the Congress nor the National Conference were able to win even one Lok Sabha seat. Reasons for the split: while the embarrassing loss was the proverbial last straw, there were constant disagreements between the two parties on issues like AFSPA, empowerment of panchayats, and creation of new administrative units in the state. While the biggest gainer is the resurgent BJP, the PDP could emerge as the most sought-after alliance partner, even though it is playing it down.
After dropping several hints, both National Conference and Congress today made it clear the two parties will not be in an alliance for the upcoming assembly elections for Jammu and Kashmir. Well, this essentially means two things. Both the parties will be fielding their candidates against each other in all 87 assembly constituencies, and also Congress will be free to form an alliance after the polls with the main opposition party, PDP. With cameraman Roof, Shujaul Haq in Srinagar for Headlines Today.
Well, joining me more for this, in fact, is Shujaul Haq himself from Jammu and Kashmir. Shuja, what is the next move for these two parties? Also, how will the BJP and the PDP gain from this split within the ruling alliance?
Well, both National Conference and Congress had dropped hints from time to time, particularly after the Lok Sabha elections, and the kind of performance that this alliance has had in the Lok Sabha elections. The cadre of both the parties on the ground were constantly hinting that that the parties should go alone when it comes to the assembly election. But today it has been made clear both the parties will fight it out, alone. Both parties will field their candidates against each other in all the 87 constituencies of Jammu and Kashmir. Well, this essentially means that the parties will be free to form any other alliance after the elections, which actually is not a very good news for National Conference, because Congress had already shown some inclination towards the principal opposition party, PDP. We heard that Congress leaders were meeting the PDP in past few months. So clearly, while on one side the National Conference will be free to field candidates all across Jammu and Kashmir, on the other side the PDP will have an edge of having a possibility of making an alliance after the polls with Congress.
Thanks, Shuja. In fact, joining me now for more on this story, Salman Sos. He's the spokesperson of the Congress party. He's joining us from Srinagar. Also, Dr. Sameer Kaul, he's a national spokesperson for the PDP. He's joining us from here in Noida, and also my colleague Ashish Maharishi is joining us in Delhi. My first question to Mr. Soz. Now, it's been a 6-year alliance that has been now broken, in fact, between the Congress and the PDP. What was the main reason for this split?
Well, we're talking about the next election. The alliance in the state continues, the government continues, but we're talking about what we're going to do in the next election. And what let's look at what happened in the parliamentary election. I think what we found is that our workers, who are basically the backbone of the Congress party, were not really favorably inclined towards an alliance with the National Conference. And the result of that was neither the Congress nor the National Conference, and in fact the National Conference cadre, I believe, is also not inclined towards a kind of an alliance.
Yeah.
So I think we were not able to transfer votes when we had the parliamentary elections, and we lost all 6 seats. So I think when you have that kind of a scenario, you cannot continue the same failed experiment. If you remember 2002, we did very well. We contested by ourselves.
Yeah.
2008, we did less better than than 2002, but still a decent total.
Right.
But I think for us, the best option was, we go it alone and we strengthen the party. We let our workers go and fight it out. And I think that's going to strengthen us in the long term.
All right. Let me now go across to the party that probably will be gaining the most out of this and would be one of the most sought after alliance partner, the PDP. Dr. Kaul, what will be the strategy now? Have you already started getting feelers from the Congress or from other parties in the state to form an alliance?
I think there was some attempt from the Congress quarters to hammer out, to have talks and to hammer out some sort of a pre-poll arrangement. But I don't think it went forward, and I think that for us, the strategy is no new than what it was earlier, as it was for the parliament elections. We decided to fight it alone then, and we decided to fight it alone now. And for us, fortunately, in the past, if you look at the parliamentary elections, the two negatives, which was the National Conference and the Congress, actually totaled to a plus for us.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, because the conditions are the same, the people of the state are very wary and they're aware of the kind of misgovernance that they've faced for all this while. And I'm sure the conditions remain the same, and you will have a similar result after the assembly elections.
Mr. Soz,
therefore I don't see any change of strategy from our side.
Mr. Soz, many outside are looking at this development as the disintegration of the UPA. The UPA in tatters after the debacle in the Lok Sabha elections. How do you see that, now instead of going it together on all seats, you will have an extra candidate to fight against?
No, not at all. I think this is the beginning of the revival of the Congress Party. I see this as one of the ways that the Congress Party can really strengthen itself. The real strength comes from the states. If we have strong units in our states, I think the central party will automatically become stronger. So I think we have to give our own workers an opportunity. We have to give our own leaders an opportunity. I think they're going to do well. And by the way, I really believe that having a multi-cornered contest in Jammu and Kashmir is ultimately good for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is good for our party. I think you'll see that the election results will surprise people, because had there been a similar contest in the parliamentary elections, you would see somewhat different results than what came about. So I think we have to keep in mind that when more parties are in the fray, it's harder for any single party to win seats. So I know that PDP is very optimistic. I think that we have to be, if I were them, I'd be a little more cautious. And by the way, Mr. Kaul said that the Congress approached the PDP for an alliance. I do not believe that is correct. We have kept our options open. We are trying to, our party's goal is that we emerge as the single largest party in this next election, and I believe that is possible.
Well, let me go across to my colleague Ashish Maharishi, who is joining us from Delhi. Ashish, many are saying that BJP will also gain a lot after the Congress and the NC and the National Conference had decided that they were going it alone. The BJP, in fact, had a good showing in the Lok Sabha elections. How do you see this development as far as the BJP is concerned?
Well, if you see, Ankit, in the recent past, Kashmir and Jammu has been the priority of Narendra Modi. Now, if you remember, he had gone to Kashmir, he had gone to Jammu, and he had inaugurated the train to Katra. So, and he had also suggested that the Kashmiri Pandits should go and they should go back to Kashmir. So, all these instances show that BJP is trying to somehow get a foothold in Jammu and Kashmir. But now we know that the way Congress has performed in Jammu and Kashmir in the recent past, especially in the Lok Sabha elections, not much options were left with NC, because NC, National Conference, all they have presence is in Jammu and Kashmir, and that if they go with the Congress the way the results have been in Lok Sabha, they would they would have sure shot lost. But now they want to revive the party, obviously National Conference as well as Congress, so that it was a win-win situation for both of them.
Absolutely.
Because
well, that's the argument both the Congress and the National Conference bringing out as of now. Let me go across to Dr. Kaul once again. Now, for the PDP, who will be the challenger or the competition number one? Will it be the Congress, the National Conference, or will it be the BJP?
I think it's not about challenger number one or number two. To be very frank with you, our main challenge is our own self. Our past performance will be our main challenger, and I think we need to better that performance that we had in the parliamentary elections, and that's how we look at it. But looking at how the coordinates are, we don't see the coordinates having changed at all. The corruption that happened has happened, or is continuing to happen. They are still locked in that embrace together, that unholy embrace, which is producing all the misgovernance and the corruption. So really, where are they going to have rebirths is something that I sort of fail to understand. Maybe you do.
Mr.
But I can't understand when the coordinates are the same and they're still in the garment. They're continuing to be with each other. They have certainly developed a different ideology now. Now, to sell that certain and different ideology to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, who are wary and are really struggling with under bad governance and under the corruption that they've seen the last.
All right, Mr. Soz, as I was asking you, as I was asking you before, also.
Where is the rebirth?
On the national scale also, people are seeing this as the falling apart of the UPA. Now, don't you believe that with a disintegrated sort of an approach with all the parties going alone, you're giving more ground to the BJP, in fact, to improve their tally?
Look, the first thing we have to keep in mind is that the Congress's obligation is to strengthen itself. That is our first priority. I mean, nothing else. The UPA will never be strong if the core of the UPA is not strong. So the Congress party must be strengthened first. And that is the prime reason we have decided not to enter into pre-poll alliance with any political party. We'll see where we stand with the people, and we'll take our agenda to them, and we see how things go. Remember, by the way, when people talk about anti-incumbency, they don't only talk about anti-incumbency in terms of who is in government, but they also talk in terms of who is your MLA. And remember that there are lots of MLAs who have not performed very well, whether they belong to BJP, PDP, obviously Congress and NC as well. So
very quickly, Mr. Soz, is the Congress open to a post-poll alliance with the PDP?
Look, our goal is to become the single largest party, and then we'll see what the mandate looks like. If so we cannot rule out anything. We cannot rule in anything right now.
Same question to Mr. Kaul. Are you open with a post-poll alliance with the Congress?
I think the people are going to decide that. We are going to go to the people. We'll try and better our performance and let them decide at the end of it.
All right, at that, we'll leave it up to the people. Of course, the big story still remains that it seems UPA is falling apart after that debacle, but the Congress and both National Conference have decided they'll be going alone. Thank you so much to my guest, Mr. Soz from the Congress Party, also Dr. Kaul from the PDP. Thanks, Ashish and Shuja, my colleagues, for joining me on this story.